Hey, what's up guys, Chris Connor here and welcome to Creatrix. Today we're going to tackle one of the most requested things on the channel, my color grading process. And I know it's been a long time coming, but if I'm going to make a video, especially a tutorial, I want to make sure it's done right. With that said, let's get right to it. Color grading, for me personally, is a way to enhance the viewer's experience and makes my shots look more awesome. I want you to keep an open mind as we go through each color grading step that you should always adjust your settings. I'm not a fan of presets. Sometimes things look good just the way that they are and they just require a bit of tweaking here and there in order to achieve the cinematic look. Now, there are two things that greatly affect your color grading process. Number one, camera settings. Taking the time to optimize your camera settings when you're on location is very important because you will have full control in post. Number two is calibrating your monitors. A calibrated monitor will mean that your shots, your films will look awesome in every screen. Whereas if you base your color grading on a monitor that gives a false image, basically, things are not good, guys. So, optimize your settings, calibrate your monitors. And now we are ready to get started. Fire up After Effects and you should be right where I am. Total editing awesomeness. Now, what I usually do before I import anything is set up my project. So, I will click this thing, and as you can see, it actually says color settings. So, this is my selection. I did a tutorial a couple of months ago where I describe why I select each one of these things as well as my render settings. The link will be in the description. I highly recommend you watch it. So these are my settings for now, but make sure that you're either working on 16 bits or 32 bits, as well as have the linearized workspace selected. And press OK. Now I will go to my folder and then import my shots. Now, as you can see, there are 6. We're going to color grade 6 different shots, and this is the only way to learn actually, because each shot will be so different than the ones you've previously color graded that I want to show you guys that the process is going to be the same, but the effects and the settings are the things that change constantly. So I will select everything and drop them in. And cool. I'll select the first one and drop it into a new composition. Funny thing about this one, it was a test for the Sock Pulse vid I did a couple of months ago, and I want to test some VFX, as you can see, the eye color changing effect. And I think it's a good shot because the color grading I did in this one was exactly the same as the sci-fi weapons and Star Wars The Apprentice. So you guys have been asking me about this, so here we go. Now, the first thing that I do is find a cool frame. Not easy in this case, but I'm going to do my best. So this one looks okay, I guess. So what I want to do as a first effect is to boost the shadows, and it doesn't matter if it's a bright shot or a dark shot like this one. And the way I do it is I select my layer, hit Ctrl D to duplicate, and then I'll go to effects, color correction and tint. Cool. Then I'll go to the mode. If you can't see this, just toggle this switch and you'll be able to see it. Select it and select soft light. Now this is obviously way too intense, so I'm going to hit T to bring up the opacity, and I'm going to select 65. This looks okay, but I can still see some details, so I'm going to cramp this up to 75. Cool. Now this gets closer to what I want. So this looks cool, and I'm going to move to sharpness. Now, sharpness is a tricky thing. It's going to depend on your camera, but also your lens. Now, in this case, I did a mistake. My camera settings were off by like 2 points, and this is a very soft image, but no worries, that's why we got After Effects. So I'm going to layer, new, adjustment layer, and you can either do it this way or hit Ctrl Alt Y. I'm going to rename this to sharpness. Okay, I'm going to select the actual layer and go to Effects, Blur and Sharpen, and select Unsharp Mask. I know, not original, but wait for it. I'm going to zoom in, and because this is so soft, I'm going to crank this up to 50. And what this effect does, in essence, is it takes the edges and it makes them sharp. Basically, it enhances them. See, off, on. This does a good job for now, but this is only one part of sharpness. If you see the radius, it says 1, and it will do a good job with edges and stuff, but it's missing out the very small things. So I'm going to hit Ctrl D once more to duplicate, and I'm going to change the radius from 1 to 0.5, and this is a bit too much, so I'm going to put 175 in this one. Now remember, you will always have to adjust the settings depending on the actual sharpness of your shot. So this looks good. Here, if I select to isolate the original layer, you can see we can already see some difference, but in terms of sharpness, check this out, off, on. A big difference, and this is because of this double sharpness method, I guess. First, we cramp up the general sharp areas of the shot, and then by changing the radius we hit the very small things. So this is how I do sharpening, and this is how my shots look sharp, as you've said a couple of times in the comments. So this looks cool. I'll move on to the next step. Now, the next effect that I usually do, I call it an HDR pass. It's not an official thing, but yeah. So I will hit Ctrl Alt Y to create a new adjustment layer, and I will rename this to HDR pass. Cool. I'm going to change the mode to lightened because I want it to affect only the light sections of the shot. I'm going to Effects, and it's already there, so Unsharp Mask. I'm going to change the radius to 25. I don't know if you guys can see this, so I'm going to cramp up the amount just for showcase purposes. Enter. Cool. Off, on. Check this. On, off. So basically, it gives an HDR feel by enhancing the light sections of the shot, and I do this very often, like a lot, almost every time. Not at this extent, this is a bit too much, so I'm actually working between 50 and 75, but this is basically how I create that HDR feel that you guys been asking about. This looks quite good for now, so I'm going to move to the next one. Now, the next one is the actual color grade of the shot, and I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. Layer, new adjustment layer. I'm going to rename this to color grade. Cool. I will select it, go to effects, color correction, hue and saturation. I'm going to go to the master channel and I'm going to crank up the primary saturation by 25. I usually do this because I want to see what are my major colors in the scene. Now in this case this is too much because the reds and the yellows are way off. So I'm going to go to the red channel and I'm going to push the saturation down -50. Okay, I'm going to go to the yellow channel and I'm going to change the lightness of the color to +25, +30. This looks good. Now, remember, color grading is an artistic expression and sometimes people will like it, sometimes they won't. But always keep in mind that we should not overdo it, right? Now, in this case, I want the skin tones to be a pale color and enhance the eye color. So I think this looks good, but I don't want to do anything more crazy with it. So the hue and saturation effect is done. Now I want to enhance the highlights a bit more. So I'm going to effects, color correction and exposure. And I'm going to put a 0.25. Just a small difference, but I prefer it this way. Now, let's have a look at the original once more and grade it. See, there's quite a difference there. Actually, the grading, the color grading, it's done for this one. I think it looks cool this way, and I'm not going to enhance the colors in any way. But there's still a couple of steps left. I will create another adjustment layer. So, layer, new, adjustment layer. I'm going to rename this to extra. Okay. I will select it and go to the mask tools. Now, if you can't see this one, just hold click and this pops up basically. Select the ellipse tool and then double click. What this does, it is automatically creates a mask basically. If you can't see the mask, toggle the switch and you should be fine. Now, from default, it adds, and this basically means every effect we're going to put on the layer, it will only affect the areas inside the mask. We'll change that. Go here, click and select subtract. Now, only the edges will be affected, which is basically what's outside the mask. So, I don't want to see the mask for now, so I'm just going to hide it. Go to effects, color correction and curves. And I'm just gonna play with the RGB and I'm going to push it down. There. And I'm going to press F on the keyboard to bring up the mask feathering, and I'm going to increase this to 400. Okay, so if I turn it off, you can see what it does. It basically gives it increases the focus in the center because it darkens the edges. Now this is already a pretty dark shot, but it's still, I think it's good to have it. Now, the final effect is a tricky one, and you'll see why. Hit Ctrl Alt Y to create the final adjustment layer. Rename this to Film Grain. Now, film grain is a tricky thing because digital noise is bad, right? But film grain is cool because it's what is generated when you shoot on film, which basically films do most of the time, I think. But anyway, and the problem is that YouTube compresses the videos once you upload them, right? And if the video has noise, any kind of noise, it destroys it completely, because YouTube is still a bit behind in terms of compression. Now, keep in mind, every video that I uploaded on YouTube for at least the past year or so had film grain in it. Now, when I played it back on YouTube, I was like, Jesus, right? This looks bad. Trust me. So, what you're actually seeing on YouTube is like 25% worse than my actual original clip. Now, this is your choice. For me, I always use this, but I will leave this as an option, basically. Anyway, let's go to the effect. In order to put a film grain, I go to Effects, Noise and Grain, Add Grain, and I will zoom in this for a bit. I'm going to select the final output, and of course this is crazy, so I'll go to Intensity, 0.05, so very low, and I'll go to the size, let's see, and I will either leave it like this or change it to 0.1 to make it really small. And that's it. Now, once more, the original and the final. And that's it. This was shot number 1, and nothing really insane, but that's coming later. Now, another optional thing that I haven't yet discussed, but I think this is a good time, is the aspect ratio of your shot. Every camera records on 16:9, which is 1920 by 1080, and this is one as well. The cinematic aspect ratio is 2:40, and it's basically when you watch a film and it has these black bars on top and the bottom. Now, I've seen many tutorials show you how you can actually put black bars, and that's a bit stupid, and I'll tell you why. You don't actually change the aspect ratio, you just put a black solid on top of your shot, and After Effects still takes the time to process what's behind, what's on top, and what's happening. Moreover, when you render it to a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it takes more space and more time to render. If you right click to a movie file and you go to details, you will see that almost 85%, if it has black bars, when you play it back, it will say 1920 by 800, and that's because the actual film is rendered on a different aspect ratio. And I'm going to show you how to do this right now. Go to composition settings, and this is what you need to change. See here, it says 16:9, but go to the height and change it to 800. Press enter. Actually, before you do, you can see here it says 2:40. And guys, Google this. Press 2:40 aspect ratio and see what comes up. Press OK. And now our shot is basically a different aspect ratio. And as you can see, this gap is basically the black bars that would show up when you actually played back to any player. So I need to reposition this, so I will select everything and hit P. Now I will just change the framing because this is a bit off. This looks cool. Close it, and that's it. That's the actual end of this shot. Now I would probably just add it to render queue and wait for a couple of minutes till it's done rendering. Now, just a quick one. Again, if I pre-compose everything, press OK, go to composition settings and change it back to 1080. This is what I would see on my screen, basically. That's it. This is just a quick way so you can see the final output. Now hit Ctrl Z twice to go back. And that's it. The first shot is done. let's move on to the next one. I will select shot number 2, bring it to a new composition. This is a cool shot, I think, and again I prefer to select landscapes because they're way more difficult to color grade. If you have a shot that is a close-up, an extreme close-up, and it has blurred backgrounds and stuff, it's very easy to color grade, and I'm going to show you guys as we go through the shots, because I'm pretty sure I have one, but this one is more difficult to color grade. So let's get to it. When I shot this, I had in mind the different aspect ratio. So I shot this in 16:9, but I left in it, let's say when I framed the shot, extra room, because I knew that I would change it later in After Effects. So I'll start by this one. Composition, settings, 800, enter. That's it. I'll hit P to reframe it like I did previously. Now, if I drop it down, it just doesn't look good. So I know it's not the right framing. I will push it up a bit more. This is a bit too much, but I think there is good. So now I'm ready to color grade. Remember the first step? Boost the shadows. So I'm going to hit Ctrl D to duplicate. Effect, color correction, tint. Okay, change the blending mode to soft light. And check this out, the previous shot we needed to change the opacity because it was too much. In this one, it's actually exactly where I want it to be, because if I zoom in here, I still have a lot of detail in the shadows, and in general I think it looks way cooler. So I don't need to change anything really. So next step is sharpness. So Ctrl Alt Y to create a new adjustment layer. I will rename this quickly sharpness. Okay, and remember the method: effect, blur and sharpen, unsharp mask. Now the general settings that work for my lens when everything is okay is 100. Enter, and then I will duplicate, and I will change the radius to 0.5 or 0.5 basically. Check this one. This is the sharpened image. Off, on, off. If we zoom in here, this is off and this is on. This is at the limit of what I think would actually look good when you play it back and in terms of sharpness. So I don't want to push it any further, but always remember that many things in VFX and After Effects, it's a trial and error thing. So what I would suggest is make a shot and like render 10 seconds just to see if everything is okay before you actually render the whole thing, right? Because imagine waiting for like 8 hours and then something's off and you need to do it all over again. Not a good thing, and it hasn't happened to me like ever. Yeah, right. Next, I'm going to do the HDR pass. So Ctrl Alt Y, new adjustment layer. Rename this HDR pass. Okay. Select it, change it to lightened, because we only want it to affect the light parts of the shot. Go to Effects, Unsharp Mask, change the radius to 25. Enter. Pay attention guys, if I zoom in here, check what it does. Off, on. See? It boosts the highlights and the light areas, and this gives it this HDR look. Now, this looks good. I don't want to cramp up the amount, and like I told you, this is usually the range that I use. 50, maybe up to 75 depending on the shot, but this looks good to me. So I'll move on to the next one. Layer, new adjustment layer. Rename this color grade. Now, this is going to be a more interesting grade than the previous one. So let's see how we do this. Once more, I'll go to Effects, Color Correction, Hue and Saturation, and I'll boost the master channel by 25. Because like I told you, I want to see what are my primary colors. As you can see, this is interesting. We have warm colors here and, well, cold colors, because red is considered warm color and blue and cyan, it's a cold color. Now, this looks cool, and yeah, I don't need to change anything. Maybe go to the red channel and like put it down by a very small amount, like -15. Yeah, I'm okay. So this looks good, but I wanted to take it to the next level. So check this out. I'll go to Effects, Selected Effects, Color Correction, Color Balance. Now, this is one of my primary tools that I use to color grade, and that is because it allows me to adjust every color across shadows, midtones, and highlights individually without affecting anything else. Don't get me wrong, curves adjustment, a very good effect, but when you change something because of the curve, it affects the other levels of light, I guess, and color, which is basically shadows, midtones, and highlights, where this one, it just affects each one individually. So let's take a look. This looks cool, but I want to push the shadows towards the cold color, which is basically cyan, greenish blue. And the way to do this is go to the red channel and press -2. See this? On, off. And this may be a bit too much, so I'm going with -1. Cool. I'm going to push the midtones a bit up, like 15, to make it a bit more blue. Cool. And now I'm going to Effects, Color Correction, Curves. I'm going to the blue channel and actually push it back down. Right there. Now what we did now, it's actually an actual color grade. If we turn this off and on, you can see the difference. Now, it's not that it's realistic, but it adds something interesting to it. And this color combination, it's actually used quite a lot in films. An extreme example would be The Matrix, where every time Neo was in the Matrix, everything had this green, yellow tint to it, right? And this is a good example of how the directors and everyone enhance the film's look by color grading. But anyway, so this thing looks cool, but I'm going to the RGB and I'm going to push it just a bit up there, because but see, here we have an issue. This side, it's a bit overexposed, but that's okay. If I go to Effects, Color Correction, Exposure, -0.20, and it's not something crazy, but it's better with it, I guess. Okay, this is looking good enough. I'm going to try something just for the sake of trying it. I'm going to Effects, Color Correction, Tint, and let's see what happens if we put it to 50. I do not like this. I prefer this version. So, cool. I'll stick with this one. My grading is once more done. So I'm going to move to the final two adjustment layers, which is the extra vignetting, I guess, to emphasize the focus on where you want, basically. If you have your actor right here, emphasize this section, or here, depending on what you have. And finally, put the film grain. So just to save some time, I'm going to the first shot. I'm going to select both of them by holding Control and then Control C to copy. Control V to paste. And let's have a look. Let's turn off the grain for now. I'll go to the extra, open up the mask, and I'm going to adjust its size in order to fit the shot better. Now, this side is darker, right? So I'm going to increase this so it doesn't affect it as much. Okay, let's turn it off and on. Off, on. It's not something insanely impactful, but there is a difference, and I use a vignette quite a bit actually. This looks cool. I'm just going to open up the film grain effect. I'm going to zoom in here. Let's see what we got. On, off. Now, this is a good example. Keep in mind the levels of compression that this video has gone through until you actually watch it on YouTube, but check this. You should see some form of distortion, and this is because we have more than 6 layers of effects. And this usually does happen. If you actually put the film grain effect, it smoothens everything. Having a film grain blends everything really nicely. So this looks good. I'm very happy with the shot. So actually I'm not as happy as I should be, because you see this is not framed correctly because the camera is a bit tilting. So I need to fix this. So I'm going to isolate the first layer, go to effects, dissolve, corner pin. I'm just going to fix the upper corner. There. I'm going to hit Ctrl C to duplicate, and I'm going to paste it to my shadow boosting thing, I guess. Ctrl V, and put it just before the tint, just to be on the right side. And I'm going to restore every layer. Cool. Now we're good to go. Now, just for presentation purposes, once more, I'm going to select everything, right click, pre-compose, just hit enter. Composition, settings, turn it back to 1080. This is how our shot looks after color grading, and this is what we would actually see if we were to play it back, right? And honestly, this looks cool. This looks like a shot from a movie. Just imagine 2 cars, some guys with guns, probably dealing drugs or something, and all hells break loose. And then a Jedi would come in. Yep, true story based on real facts. So anyway, I hit Ctrl Z twice to bring up the original. And basically, again, at this point, I would just hit render and go with it. So, shot number 2, done. Shot number 3, coming up. Drop it into a new composition, and we're good to go. Now, this is a really interesting shot. Let's find a cool frame first. Yeah, this one, cool. Now, this is an interesting shot because there are quite a bit of VFX in it. So I did a sky replacement, which is quite good. If we see here, we can still see every little detail in the trees and even my hair, everything. And I think that everything looks good, right? And I'm going to do a tutorial pretty soon this, so stick around. So I wanted to have an actual VFX shot as an example for color grading. So you can see, and I do this every time, I will always complete my VFX shot first. I will probably do some color correction effects to make everything fit together. and then I would pre-compose. I would color grade that layer as one. I will not first color grade my shot and then put VFX on it. No, never. First finish with everything VFX and then you color grade. So let's get to it. We have our cool frame and I'm going to boost the shadows like I always do. So Control D, Effect, Color Correction, Tint. Change the blending mode to soft light. Now, again, this is too much. So I'm going to press T and I'm going to change this to 70, most likely. 70, 75, I'm going to leave it to there for now. Okay, so step number 2, create a new adjustment layer, and do the sharpness technique. So for the time's sake, I'm going to go to number 2, sharpness, hit Control to select both, Control C to copy, and Control V to paste. And just rename this sharpness. Okay. If I zoom in here, you can see this is a bit too much in this case. I mean, it does a good job, but it's a bit off. So I'm going to reduce the sharpness to 75 and 75. These two don't always have to be the same, but yeah, play around with the settings, and basically experimenting is the best way to get the result that you want. So looks cool, and let's move on to the next one, which is the HDR pass. Now in this shot I have a feeling it's going to be good because we have this all these clouds and light, and this will enhance the shot quite a bit. So I'm going to go to number 2 just for time's sake, Control C, Control V to save some time. Let's see what it does. Off, on. Check this. Off, on. And if I push this to 75, off, on. Check this one out. There's a difference. Off, on. But there's the issue. If I zoom in here, you can see it creates this white glow around, like it's like a light drop, but we don't want that, right? So there's a really easy fix for this. I'm going to select my pen tool. I'm going to do a quick mask, removing my shoulder and my head from the effect and including everything else. Remove the mask, press F, just do a quick like 50, and yeah, check this out. On, off, on, off. See how it enhances pretty much everything. And I'm just going to remove this, just so cool. So yeah, so sometimes you will have to put masks in your layers in order to color grade it to the best of your capabilities, I guess. So if I were to leave this one, it would probably be okay, but I wouldn't like it. So take the time to make things look good, basically. So this looks awesome, but still it has a long way to go. And what's the next step? A new adjustment layer, which will be called color grade. So Control Alt Y, rename this color grade, and this will be an interesting one. So I'm going to go to effects, color correction, and I will select hue and saturation once more. I'm going to boost the master channel plus 25. Okay, so we work with a lot of warm colors once more, and let's try to balance the shot by including some, how to say this? Well, when you combine colors that are not in the same range and they're opposite to each other, like it's red and blue or warm and cold, like we said before, it makes the shot more interesting. So I'm going to effects, color correction, color balance. I'm going to the reds again. I'm going to push them to minus 2.5. Nothing crazy, but I think it's gonna look better. Okay, this looks okay. Let's go to the midtones this time and press them, put them down, minus 7.5. Here we can see something off, on. See, it mostly impacts this area right here, but it creates a cool dynamic between the trees and the sky, right? So off, on. Okay, I'm going to effects, color correction, curves, and I will press the RGB just a bit up because the highlights of the sky are not very highlighted, let's say, because this was a VFX shot and the sky was replaced, so I think it looks a bit off the way that it is. And that looks okay. It's not great, it's okay. And what's missing, in my point of view, it's the light from the sky does not scatter in the shot the way that it should be. But there's an easy fix for this. So I'm going to select the color grade effect. Effect, stylize, glow. Yeah, that's not what I have in mind. So I'm going to the glow radius and I'm going to crank it up 500. That's okay, but as you can see, it doesn't really fill up the frame and it stops right around here. So I'm going to put this up to 800. Much better. So let's the intensity, it's okay, but I'm going to decrease it by just a touch, 0.8. Okay, cool. Now this looks cool. There's a big difference, see, off, on. It's almost a different shot. So this looks awesome, but it just needs 2 more steps to make it even more awesome. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to number 2 and just copy paste once more the film grain and the extra to save some time. Control C, Control V. Just increase the layer. Cool. Now let me just reset the layers because they've been moved because we changed the aspect ratio. So reset, reset. Cool. Whoa, check this out, guys. This is with the 2 new layers and this is without them. See, this is what I was talking about having vignettes in your shot. It basically helps focus on a more interesting area, which is basically this cool clouds and the sky lights, whereas without, I would focus basically on everything, where if it's on, it really enhances the feel of the shot. So I will actually try to even increase the effect there. And I'm going to click this thing to show the mask and I'm going to increase it there because again this section was way too dark, so I'm going to expand the mask so I will decrease the effect, where on the other hand I'm going to bring this in. Yeah, I think it looks awesome, to be honest. Look at the original and the graded. Awesome. Now of course this is a very vivid approach to color grading, but I think it's a right look for the shot. I'm just going to check the film grain, and I'm going to zoom in here to see the effect. See, it blends everything really nicely. If I turn it off, it's okay, but it has these weird artifacts, and I'm just going to put it on, and it's pretty good. And again, this is so small that you can't actually see it, but yeah. And also keep in mind that this is one frame from a video, right? And if you're shooting on a cinematic mode, you probably have 24 frames per second, and that means you're going to see 24 of these things in 1 second. So even if something does not look perfect, it's still a frame, guys. So if you can get it close enough that you're saying it looks good, trust me, when you actually see it moving, it's gonna look even better. So this shot is done, and I'm really happy with it. So I'm going to move on to the next one. So I'm going to click shot number 4, drag it into a new composition. This is another interesting shot, because this is a video that I'm currently editing, and it's not something new. It's a gunshot, but you know what? There's so many gunshot videos on YouTube, and there are so many wrong things about them. And that's the thing with the channel, with this one, right? I might do some common effects like lightsabers or gunshot, but I'm going to take the time and really dive into the effects, right? And how to enhance them and make them actually look realistic, and not like the way that basically 90% of things on YouTube look. And then I'm going to show you guys how I did it. So I'm almost done with the actual gunshot effects and stuff, and you're probably gonna see it next week. But until then, let's see how I would color grade this. So again, I would find my cool frame. I think this looks okay for now. Oh, and by the way, if we go to the previous shot, you will notice that I left the aspect ratio exactly the same. And that's because when I shot this, I didn't really have the aspect ratio in mind. So I left no room. No room. If I was to change this, it would not look good. So in this one, on the other hand, I left room intentionally because I knew I would change the aspect ratio. So let's do this one first, because I want to have the actual frame before I do my color grading. So composition, settings, height 800, enter. Hit P, bring up the position, and let's fix this. So this looks cool, and we're good to go. I will start again by boosting the shadows. So Control D to duplicate. Go to Effects, Color Correction, Tint, and Soft Light. Once more, this is too much, so hit T, and I will bring it down to 75. This is still too much actually, so I'll go with 65. See, you will always have to adapt your settings, guys. But as you can see, so far, the process is quite similar. This looks okay for me, so I'm going to move on to the sharpness, and once more, save some time, Control C, Control V. Let's zoom in here. This is without sharpness. Looks okay, very soft. With sharpness, the double method technique. See, it sharpness very well, I would say. And again, this is a frame. When you see this moving, it's gonna be way cooler. So I'm happy with the sharpness. So let me just rename this so we have everything and we know what each one thing does. Sharpness. Okay. I will move on to the HDR pass. Just again, save some time. Control C, Control V. Now this is too much for this shot. If I turn it off and on, it's okay, but not quite there. So I'm going to take this back to 50, which is like my main settings that I always start from. So off, on, nothing crazy, but I'm gonna leave it on for this one. And now I'm going to create a new adjustment layer. Again, I know, adjustment layer, rename this to color grade, and let's see what we're going to do with this one. So once more, I'm going to effects, select it first, effects, color correction, hue and saturation. Okay, I'm going to boost the colors up by 25. And again, I can see that the skin tones are way too much. So I'm going to the red channel. I'm going to mess the lightness this time, plus 25, enter. And you can switch between the saturation and the lightness and see what works. One might be better than the other. So this looks okay, but again, I can see that the shot has this yellow tint, let's say. So I'm going to yellows. I'm going to do the same thing. So we managed to remove some of it. I'm going to effects, color correction, and color balance like we did in the previous shots. And for this one, I want to enhance the blues and make some sort of combination of blue and red, because I think it will look good, especially if you have a master flash that's orange. Blue and red orange are complementary colors when you put them on the same shot, because I don't know, they're opposites but they look good at the same one. So I'm going to midtones blue. I'm going to put it up by 15. Okay, I'm going to the shadow blues. I'm going to do them plus 5. See, off, on, pretty cool. But now it seems a bit desaturated. So I'm going to actually repeat the same thing, hue and saturation. But now remember, guys, the order in which you put the effects plays a big difference, because now hue and saturation, no matter what I do, it will build up on the previous effects. So I'm going to hue and saturation plus 15. Okay, good enough. Actually, I'm going back and I'm going to increase the midtones greens by 2.5. Okay, this looks okay. I'm not super impressed, but okay, not bad either. I'm going to number 2 and just Control C and duplicate the last two things, because they're almost always the same. Now, as you can see here, you can really tell that there's a vignette. So I'm going to hit F and increase the feathering, 700. Okay, let's reduce the effect a bit. And then I will show the mask, and I'm going to reframe it a bit, because like when you do one effect for another shot and then you just copy paste, even if it's to save some time, you should always make some adjustments. Okay, that looks okay-ish. Let's see the original one. There's a definite improvement, but I would still work on it, to be honest, because it looks okay, but I think it can be a bit better. Anyway, this looks good enough, so I'm going to move to the next ones, because I think they're a bit more interesting. So drop it in. Now this is really interesting. Remember when I told you previously that shots that are extreme close-ups and they have a lot of blur backgrounds are very easy to color grade? Guys, they are extremely easy to color grade, because when you have everything in focus, you need to make sure that everything is balanced, right? But here in this example, only the locket is in focus. Everything else we don't care. When you would see this shot in a film, you would focus on this area, right? So we only need to care about balancing this section of the shot and making it look good. What happens on the background, we don't care. So I'll show you what I mean. I will go to composition settings, and I will once more change the aspect ratio, because when I shot this again, I had in mind the 2x40. Okay, hit P, reposition it. There we go. Awesome. I will Control D to duplicate. Go to effects, color correction, tint. I know it gets repetitive, but I think it's good to see that despite the fact that I do the same thing over and over again, many things change and I have to adapt my settings. So I'll go to blending mode, soft light, selected. Almost there, hit T, 85, maybe 75. Okay, looks cool. I will go back and Control C, Control V to save some time. Source name, awesome. I will zoom in here and check this out. I don't have to worry about anything that's in here. I just need to worry about this section. If I turn it off, the sharpness, it's okay actually, but now it's far more enhanced. And I can even push this even further, 100 and 100. This is again at the limit. There's no way to push it any further. This is really sharp. Off, on. And once more, this is a frame, guys. When you see this moving, it's gonna look way better. So I'm happy with how it looks, so I'm going to move to the next step, which is the HDR pass. Once more, Control C, Control V. Let's see what it does. On, off. On, off. Look at this. Look at this section. On, off. Now, you can take this effect as far as you want, but always keep in mind balance. You need to find the proper balance between its effect and all the elements. Well, almost all the elements, right? So I'm going to go to the actual grade layer. So Control Alt Y, rename this color grade. Okay. Once more, I will go to effects, color correction, hue and saturation, because like I told you, I want to enhance the primary colors and see what I'm working on. So 25 always works for me. Enter. Actually, I'm gonna leave it as it is. I think it looks quite nice, but I still want to enhance the blues and reduce the reds a bit in order to give it that opposite color thing that we talked previously. So I'm going to effects, color correction, color balance. Again, same effects, different settings. So I'm going to the blue channel this time. I'm going to put it to -2.5. See what I did? Off, on. Let's mess around with the mid-tone rates. Let's try -5. Okay, nothing really crazy happened. Mid-tone greens, 5. Ooh, this one did the big one actually. Check this one. Off, on. See, even though the settings are very small, like I didn't change that much, the effect is quite evident. So I'm going to increase the blues as a final one, +15. Maybe +10. Yeah, that one's better. I'm pretty happy with how this looks. Again, let's see the original one. and degraded. This looks good. Once we add the final effects, Control C, Control V, the vignette and the film. Yep, look, this looks perfect. See how easy and quick this one was, and pretty much everything I did actually worked. I didn't have to look for special settings that much, right? So once more, let me show you how this would actually look. I will pre-compose just for showcase purposes, composition, nope, settings, and turn this back to 1080. This is what I would actually see if I played it back, right? And again, like if I close my eyes and I open them and I see this, I'm like, yep, if this one was in a movie, I would say this looks like a movie, right? So it's a good rule to take a break, right? And then come back, reopen After Effects and have a look. And if you still think that it looks good, you're pretty much on a good path, right? Because if you open this up again and you think that something's off, for example, I will be honest, I'm not sure about this. I will come back later, but for this one, it just looks right. So anyway, I will hit Control Z because we don't need this. And again, this is ready. I would hit render and just wait for it. So let's move to the final shot, right? Finally. I know it's been long, but trust me, when I make this, it's even harder for me. So let's go to the final shot. Project number 6 and click and drop. I'm not sure if you guys remember this. Maybe if I flipped over, transform, flip horizontally. And this is a cool trick. If you are working on the same project for quite some time, it's a good idea to flip it over because you'll get crazy. If you're looking the same thing for more than 2 days, not good. So this was one of the shots that I did on the preview videos that I have for color grading. And as you can see, it looks pretty different, right? That's okay. We're going to take this one to the next level. So I'm going to composition settings. Change the aspect ratio to the cinematic one. I think it's called the anamorphic aspect ratio, but yeah, I will hit P to reposition this. Okay, there it looks good. So what I'm going to do now, as I'm sure you've known by now, is play with the shadow boost. Control D, effect, color correction, tint. Change the mode to soft light. And once more guys, this is at 100%, but because the shot is so bright, it actually does make that much of a dramatic impact, right? On and off. Looks okay. So I'm going to move to sharpness, but again, I just want to be quick, so I will copy both of these and see what happens. So, oh, this does not look good. This is too much sharpness in this one. So I'm going to drop it down to 50 and 50. This looks better. Now, as far as the HDR thing goes, to be honest, I don't really see the use of it. I mean, yeah, it enhances this section a bit. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna leave it in, but I'm going to reduce its impact. So let's put it to 35. Again, as you can see, I constantly change my settings. So this looks okay. So I'm going to move on to the grading part. So Control Alt Y to create a new adjustment layer. Rename this color. grading. And the cool thing about this way of color grading is that if something is too much, you can always select the layers with the effects and press T, like T, bring up the opacity and play with the opacity to reduce the impact so you can rebalance your color grade, which is a cool thing. Whereas if I had all of the effects on my actual shot, I will have to go into each individual effect and try to find a balance, which is way harder. So color grade layer, let's do this. For this one, I'm going to do things just a bit different. I'm going to effects, color correction, exposure, and what I'm going to do is bring this very bright area a bit down. So exposure minus 0.5, maybe a bit too much, minus 0.35, looks better. And now I'm ready to color grade because I want to keep this sort of grayish, very not saturated. Basically you can see any color and I think it looks cool, so I'm not going to try to enhance any colors in this one. I'm just going to mess with them. Basically I'm going to effects, color correction, color balance, and I will go for a greenish look in this one. I'm going to go to the blue balance and I'm going to bring this one down, minus 2. I'm going to do the same for the red ones. Okay, let's bring up the greens by 2. Okay, I will have to adjust the midtones as well, because if you can see, the majority here are midtones, right? In the first shot, we had mostly dark colors, because this shot is quite dark, whereas this one is quite bright. So I'm going to go to the midtone blue. I'm going to go minus 5. Minus 5 for the blue one as well. And let's put the greens up a bit. Getting there. I'm gonna leave it as it is for now, and I'm going to hit Control to copy paste the film grain and the vignette. Okay, so I'm going to the vignette and I'm going to adjust the mask. This looks good, I guess. Very different. Look at the original. Very different. Looks cool. I'm going to try something. Let's hit Control D to duplicate. Yeah, this is way too much, but let me see. I basically want the sky to look very menacing, like something's off, you know? Something is not right when you look at this. And I think this should look cool. Yeah, again, this preference, this is very aggressive color grade, I would say, because it's not, again, really realistic when you look at this, but it just looks good. Again, this is my point of view, but yeah. Let's see the original, the enhanced. See, there's quite a difference there. And it's funny because at the beginning you can't actually see that there's this dust, which is actually snow, but when you color grade it actually comes up, which is, I don't know, funny, I guess. Let's go to the color, back to color grading, and I'm going to effects, color correction and curves. I'm just going to push this down just a bit. I'm going to the blue channel. I'm going to break it. Oops. Blue channel. There we go. Done. Now this destroys it. Right there. Let's see how it looks. Nah, I prefer the previous one. And like again, color grading in general takes a lot of experimentation. Like this looks good for now, but maybe something else looks even better, and that takes time, guys. So if you have the time, experiment. It's gonna worth it, guys. So once again, let's see how it would actually look in our screens, right? So I will pre-compose. Okay, composition settings 1080. Enter. Come on, don't tell me this thing does not look cinematic. Pretty good. The vignette is a bit too much, I think. Now that I look at it, I think we should reduce it. Let's see. Let's go and press T. Let's put this down to 85. Yep. Hit Control Z. See? This improved, right? So I would go with this one, and I would just hit render for like 10 seconds to see if everything is okay, because like I told you, when you actually see these things move, it's not exactly the same, right? So this looks awesome. Pretty much this looks awesome. And yeah, that's it. As you can see, the process is pretty much the same, right? But each shot has its own little things and its own details that for that reason you will need to adjust your settings. For example, this one, we also included a glow effect. And that's it. What I'm guessing, what I'm trying to say is each shot is different, and so try to spend some time to find the best combination of settings, and that will make the shot look pretty good. Okay guys, that's a wrap. Let me know what you thought in the comment section below. Always nice to hear from you, and make sure you click that subscribe button, cause things are about to get epic. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Until then, be awesome.